In the world of entertainment, if there's one fantasy IP that everyone is aware of, it's Dungeons & Dragons, the popular fantasy tabletop role-playing game invented by the Netflix hit series Stranger Things, the game that kicked off one of many moral panics about Satanism, kids summoning demons and screaming bloody hellfire. That isn't a spell in the game, but it probably should be. But the people that were causing a panic clearly didn't actually pay attention to the people who were playing D&D. And believe it or not, they weren't all Satanists trying to raise demons, or at least the uncool ones weren't. If you're raising Satan to join you in your campaign and laughing when his stoic halfling fails a speech check chatting up a busty dragon, then you probably were one of the cool ones.
I'm gonna walk out.
You're gonna walk out. A black exit out of your game. You have just died, went into another multi-universe, no longer existing. Your character is permanently, forever destroyed.
You don't owe me, just expect the same in return. I got to save my life sometimes.
You just got wiped out.
Okay.
But of course, over time, and as Satan didn't take over the entire world because of some dweebs role-playing, the name and product grew to exceptional heights. With this, of course, comes video games. You know, the better version, where you're only tricked into reading if you really want to. The MMO genre is perfect for D&D, and of course, Neverwinter isn't the first or most likely the last D&D MMO out there. There is also, of course, DDO, or Dungeons & Dragons Online, which is a much different, slower experience to what I'm covering today, but no doubt I'll have a look into it at some point. But 7 years after the release of DDO, Cryptic Studios, the same Cryptic who made other MMOs such as City of Heroes, Champions Online and Star Trek Online, were purchased by none other than Atari in 2009. Atari announced that Neverwinter was in development with Cryptic and was set to be released for late 2011. The game was shown off first at E3 2011, and God, how I miss how lovely and cringe E3 was. But at E3, a lot was revealed about the game, which was originally scheduled to be released as a cross-media event which coincided with the release of a series of 4 books by fantasy author R.A. Salvatore. Salvatore had wrote some of the biggest storylines in the D&D universe, such as the Icewind Dale trilogy, the Dark Elf trilogy, and the Legend of Drizzt, along with a tabletop game that was going to be made by Wizards of the Coast. Laura Tomovic, a member of the Wizards of the Coast's marketing team, explained that they used Neverwinter as the connective tissue across multiple product categories, as a part of a transmedia campaign for fans to experience the brand how they choose to. It wasn't long after this that Atari sold Cryptic, which were then acquired by the entirely reputable and consumer-friendly Perfect World Entertainment. With this acquisition, Neverwinter was delayed until 2012. Perfect World also purchased the rights to publish the game, and by October, Neverwinter had changed from a co-op multiplayer game to a free-to-play MMORPG, just like every other one of Perfect World's games. I actually played quite a bit of Perfect World when it came out, and it was, well, shit. And of course, this change delayed the game even further. Perfect World took Neverwinter on another round of marketing campaign which they called the Siege of Neverwinter. It featured videos from the game's story, and the game ran its closed beta testing from February the 8th until April the 14th, 2013, a whole year after the game's originally promised release date. Reading some of the player experiences regarding the first beta weekend seems really positive. A lot of people saying how impressed they are with the game being blown away at its caliber, especially with it being a free-to-play game, and overall it looks like a lot of people were having a lot of fun with it, but also that the puzzles and traps weren't challenging enough, and that the main questline was pretty generic but could potentially be fixed if the writers had another pass at it. However, a lot of the sentiment, like most games, started to disappear as people got to play the game more. It's not that the game came out and immediately tanked. There was still a similar level of enjoyment, but there clearly is a lot of frustration from people saying about how the game is too easy, complaining that in comparison to some more harder MMOs like Ragnarok and Tibia, you could just get to the point of doing all the content in 2 to 3 months. 2 to 3 months at endgame doesn't sound like the worst, but also I can understand back then why that would seem relatively quick. Interestingly, someone in this post mentions an AMA that the Cryptic devs did, but I haven't been able to find it on the subreddit they mentioned. However, there is one that the lead combat designer Kevin Stocker did on the Neverwinter subreddit, and the questions about difficulty pop up there too. So it does actually seem that the difficulty is a bit more of a commonly raised issue. I've read through all the comments on the post and a lot of them are quite lost on me, I think if I had been involved in Neverwinter, it would have been interesting to see how many of these things have actually been implemented and the impact that it's had on the game. If you are somebody who would be interested in it for that very reason, the link to the AMA is in the description. The game has always done relatively okay in the space that it belongs in, the free-to-play MMORPG bracket, with most people looking quite favourably towards the game itself, with all of the Metacritic critic scores actually going above 60 on all platforms, with the user score actually being 5.4, which, is between mixed and average, so that's really not that bad. Granted, there are a lot of 0s and 1s in there, but there's a lot of 10s and 8s, and it's quite interesting when people being mad saying that it's not a true D&D game. You know what, surprisingly, I actually see the good in Neverwinter. It's an enjoyable game overall, and I even found myself considering an alt and just having that temptation to look at other classes. Interestingly, Cryptic actually released some stats for the game over the course of 5 years in 2018, showing off the total player amount since launch being 18,775 times the population of Neverwinter itself, and that players had died 202 million times, showed the deadliest dungeon, most popular race, most popular class, and that 63 million monsters had been slain, and more than 6.5 million of those being dragons, probably in dungeons and dragons. This is always a good bit of easy PR for companies. I don't know if it's just me, but I've always loved stats like that in games. I remember going to look at the death tracker in Dark Souls 2, and I'm even more impressed with Helldivers 2's statistic reporting. Insane how far technology has come in video games. But this isn't about Helldivers, however, I have been playing a lot of it, which is probably a very common phrase to hear at the moment. The game saw itself change owners another time when Embracer Group purchased Perfect World Entertainment from Perfect World Europe through Gearbox Software. The same Gearbox that lied about where they were spending their Aliens Colonial Marines budget. Fucking Randy Pitchford. However, unfortunately, not everything seems to be in the best lights at the moment. Given that a few months back, Embracer had done some layoffs at Cryptic and announced that going forward it would be operating under Deco Games. It'd be interesting to see if they also sell them off like they're doing at the moment with Gearbox, and how that will affect the future of the game. But I imagine it's enough of a justification in keeping them by the amount that they could potentially earn, not only through the sales of in-game services and items, but also just by the fact that they're holding on to a game that is under the D&D brand. No doubt, given the massive resurgence in D&D in the last few years, it's going to keep them in a more favourable light. Neverwinter's content updates don't have big expansions. It works a little bit more like ESO in that regards, where you'll have a decent sized once or twice a year update, which goes by the name of modules, and these modules bring all the standard new campaigns, questlines, dungeons, etc. To date, there have been 30 modules added to the game since launch, with Spelljammer being the current one, and whilst it is a lot of content, whether or not you think it's all good is completely subjective. It probably also really helps that the game is like the most perfect MMO for consoles, being free on both the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and no doubt the more recent iterations of those consoles as well. I remember when I used to use my Xbox for something other than Netflix, and whenever you'd open the store there'd always be a Neverwinter pop up in some capacity. So they're clearly putting enough advertising in the game to keep it in the spotlight. But actually onto the game itself. And my first idea when booting it was that I was going to play a Dwarf Warrior. I always just want to immediately go for Dwarf Warriors. I don't know what it is, it's like some sort of calling, but I decided against it this time. I'll do something I don't usually do, but first, this character creation is, it's okay. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it isn't as bad as some other games around this time. But what you would expect is that there are a lot of races, 15 to be specific, with 6 of them being locked behind lockboxes and other monetization. You have all the classic D&D races to pick from, and as I'm clearly a man of high fantasy, I went with human. Classes again, you're spoilt for choice with 9 different classes to choose from, with a nice variety of melee and ranged classes. Remember what I said when I wanted to play something I don't usually? Well, I decided to pick a wizard. I did consider warlock, but I do play a lot of warlocks in other games, so I decided to go with a less necromantic one. As you'd absolutely expect in any D&D game, you get to add a small bonus to your ability scores. I do think that they should have gone one further with this and given you the option to wipe all of your scores and make a completely custom ability build. I think that would have been a bit cooler and more in line with what you'd expect when playing anything in this IP. It would have given the players a more interesting way of building their characters and making it more personal. And I, as a wizard, obviously picked intelligence, but honestly, if it was any other class, I probably would have chosen whatever a guide had told me to. I don't know D&D at the best of times, let alone when all the comments are just like, it's just 4E, as if I knew what was in any of the other E's. With your character, you're greeted with the standard appearance presets that allows you to then fully customize everything you could possibly want to. Well, maybe not everything, but this was when I came across my first bug. The head, whenever I move my character in the screen, gets squished, and this wasn't the last time this happened. But after you've customized your character, you're now able to do even more customization. Picking your character's origins and their deity affiliation, they don't make any difference to the game itself or your character's stats, but D&D fans might be a bit angry if it wasn't in there. Same for the character biography section. You get to summon your best fanfic.net work and stick it in there for all to see. I didn't even test it out to see how it would handle things like profanity or ERP, which actually in hindsight's pretty fucking dumb of me, I should have done that. I've never been much of a role player myself, but I can kind of see the appeal. I've enjoyed watching some tabletop in the past, but I've never really been involved myself. But after you've named your character, you're in. Well, not really. You get the cutscene that sets up the battle for Tutorial Island. And you know, it's average, big dragon necromancer that I swear is just a staple of D&D. And look, I am not complaining, I love a good necro storyline, and in fact, I love the style of old fantasy, the big beardy wizards and necromancers with purples and greens everywhere, and just, it's fantastic. I'm kind of surprised there's never really been that, like, sort of big MMO that's ever tried to stylize like that. I guess we've got old school RuneScape, which is probably why I like its aesthetic so much. The cinematic, honestly, actually looks quite nice. Even today, it has a few issues and obviously isn't aging the best, but it doesn't look bad. It reminds me a bit of the ESO trailer with the three factions all fighting, and I'd say for its quality, probably like Blizzard in 2006, which honestly really isn't the insult that it sounds like. Blizzard's cutscenes even in the 90s were so technically ahead of their time, and they've always been able to consistently produce these top tier cinematics. Waking up after the big battle with the bony boy, you find that the Dracolich is making its way through the soldiers like it's no one's business, and you have to help reinforce the keep. Well, not until you've learned your spells anyway. On first impression, the combat is fast and fluid. It did take a little bit of getting used to with how sensitive the camera can be at the start, but you get used to it pretty quick. Or you know, you could just change your sensitivity settings, I don't know why I didn't. You also learn really quick that dodging is your friend. Personally, I'm not a fan of the double tap the direction method, so swapped it for the shift direction method instead. But the dodging feels really good, and even more importantly, you have really good hitboxes. The amount of times you can dodge stuff as it's being swung and moving out of the way at the last second is great, and honestly makes you feel pretty good. Not as good as like a Souls game perfect dodge or parry, but the combat feels a lot more alive than a standard MMO. And not only that, each enemy has a little grey bar when you move to the correct position, which will turn blue, meaning you're hitting additional damage on the target because you're attacking its flank and have combat advantage. I quite like this idea, and I'm quite surprised that more MMOs don't have it implemented on things like boss fights, if not even in the entire game. Having that dynamic tactical advantage is a nice extra layer to the combat system. Not that it's so easy to do when you're soloing the quests, but no doubt it's crucial in endgame. It's one of the few MMOs I've played with checkpoints. Graveyards in specific areas, sure, but the checkpoints in dungeons is interesting. It's not like it's a particularly hard game for the most part, but there are plenty of bonfires that you'll unlock throughout your time. You'll get access to invoking the gods, which is a skill that you can use within any rest zone, which acts like a standard time played reward like in most mobile games. You can get a total of 6 blessings per day, with an incremental cooldown timer which starts at 15 minutes going all the way to 90 minutes. It mostly gives you a bonus for your rough astral diamonds though. One of the things I do find very weird is that there isn't any native controller support. I've played Neverwinter on Xbox and I thought it was perfect for controller, and I still do, and it's a bit strange that they haven't added the support yet. Now, no doubt you can download a third-party program and remap it, but you shouldn't really have to when it's already implemented into other versions of the game. I guess also they'll probably never make it so that it's cross-platform like Final Fantasy, but still I feel like it could benefit quite a lot. It is one of those games where you could just get cozy and play. So after fighting your way through packs of zombies and learning that loot is run over to pick up, you meet up with Makos. A tiefling mage who brings you onto the best part of the tutorial, clearing the bridge. And why is clearing the bridge the best part? Well, there's a boss fight, and if it's one thing Neverwinter loves, it's a boss fight. And honestly, me too. If you don't enjoy them, well, you better get used to them because it is the main gameplay loop. Quests in Neverwinter seem to go somewhat like killing and gather, followed by another killing and gather, to which then you go into a cave, and at the end of the cave will be a boss. It follows a bit of an Elder Scrolls approach, but I'll go into more detail about questing later. So after you've defeated the Harbinger, you're taken directly to the Protector's Aunt. Wait a minute, I swear to God this better not be like Secret World. Okay, it's not, thank fuck, because I would have quit immediately right here. I would have uninstalled this fucking game if it did that to me. I will always have a vendetta against the patching in Secret World, I swear to God. Protector's Enclave is your starting city. I did originally think it was a bit of a hub city given how many people were there, but it seems that the community is quite adamant that there is no such thing as a hub city, and most people are just wherever the latest module is. There's a lot of players there, but a lot of them are new as well. You'll find yourself sitting in here and having it act as a hub city for the time being at least. It's a nice introduction to be put straight into the city as you get a bit of a glimpse into how active a game is. I feel like if you start off an MMO solely in a specific starting area like WoW does for example, a game can seem less populated. You best get used to being here because you'll have to come back here quite a lot to make progress in the campaign. You'll be speaking a lot with Sergeant Knox, who gave me the first proper impression of how weird the voices are in the game. I swear sometimes it's like they grabbed anyone they could from the office and got them to say some lines because the tone changes page to page, sometimes not even sounding like the same person, which can be really jarring.
Protector's Enclave needs your help.
So, you are the one who saved Makos. Haha!
Have you come to help us regain our honor? Our brothers of the Grey Wolf tribe call us forsworn.
My people have fallen on hard times from the strife in this land.
The victims are bound to sacrificial stones and tortured to death.
Throughout the campaign, as you continue to progress through the zones, you'll keep coming back to Nox, who will give you a new quest to talk to some other vendor in the city. I really like that you get slowly introduced to the basic bits of the city and your other activities such as professions without you just being immediately overwhelmed with all the stuff that you can possibly do. I find this particularly even more confusing when you've got a free-to-play MMO on top of that, because you'll also have a multitude of different currencies to figure out almost immediately. And here's the most important part about the first quest with Nox. He sends you to talk to the mount merchant, and you get a mount immediately. It has an instant summon and it runs fucking quick. I was honestly a little bit shocked. Blessed be, this might actually be a top tier MMO. Now don't get me wrong, there are definitely real money mounts as well, but I can appreciate it when devs take 2 seconds out of wringing every single player dry. Thank you so much Cryptic for just using your weak hand to punch me in the face today, I love you. At this point, you're also introduced to the training room in which you have to do combat training. I originally thought that it's such a weird place to have it given that you've gone through all the zombies and the Harbinger, but after looking online a little bit, yeah, I'm kind of glad it is in there. But maybe I was a bit too quick to judge whether or not people would actually struggle. Also, whilst your basics such as dodging and, well, attacking should be down at this point, you aren't necessarily going to know about mount power, the combat advantage, encounter powers, or daily powers. And after you've done the combat training and you know exactly what you're doing, this is where Nox will send you out on your first adventure. The undead woman is bloody up to no good and seems to be working towards something wicked in Neverdeath Graveyard, with guards reporting sightings of red wizards and necromantic rituals. Which, I mean, come on now, if you're going to call something Neverdeath Graveyard, you at the absolute minimum should expect red wizards and necromantic rituals. It's like naming a nightclub the Hive and not expecting futuristic Morgoths with nanotechnological augmentations to turn up in droves. Do you want to know what else makes this game pretty good? Quest chat continuing when you've moved from NPCs. I fucking love this. It's like in Diablo 3, being able to continue playing whilst also listening to the NPC is peak for me. I'm sure you've all been there when you're going to have that ult or start a new MMO, when you're going to read all the quest text, and no doubt there are a lot of people who will make sure they let you know that they always read every single bit of quest text ever in every MMO because they're a different breed, but god damn, this helps. I think as I'm getting older, I'm finding that it's more difficult to get fully invested into a game's smaller details, and honestly, I only have myself to blame for that, but I did find myself a lot more invested in the stories on offer in Neverwinter because of it. I've got to say as well, I'm actually quite glad that Cryptic made the new player go from tutorial, brief city learning, and then to your first location rather than starting at the first one. I think that the tutorial does a really good job of setting everything up, and not that this isn't typical, but if the game started in Never Death, I just wouldn't be talking about it still. Whilst working my way through the packs of zombies and wizards, I discovered something interesting that they don't teach you in the combat training. You can push enemies off ledges, and not only ledges but even pits, and this includes bosses. This is amazing. Neverwinter's combat physics are actually really quite nice, or at least playing a mage feels great. There are items in the world that get affected by your pushback spells, and the enemies don't suffer from the same pathfinding issues as other MMOs. If you jump from a ledge, they'll typically jump back after you rather than running the long way round, and these things really impressed me about Neverwinter. I don't think any MMO at the time of its release had that. If they did, please do let me know, because I want to play them, and kudos to them, because you barely even see this stuff in modern MMOs. Something you'll soon discover about playing Neverwinter is that there are quite a lot of collectibles and chests to find. A lot of them require kits which you can buy, or your class will already be proficient in them. For example, the wizards can open arcane chests, but you do have the potential, like I say, to just buy the kits to attempt to unlock them. And I do mean attempt, as the one you aren't naturally proficient in have an unlock chance per kit. I want to quickly touch upon refinement. It's a process where you upgrade various items to higher qualities, but to actually be able to do so, you need refinement points. These are the primary resource used in refining enchantments, artifacts, and artifact gear. These points are generated by breaking down gear and gemstones such as quartz. Alongside that, you can also break down enchantments and artifacts. Your big refinement point contribution per day is going to be your rough astral diamonds, which can be turned into astral diamonds. These can be obtained from most content, but there is a daily limit of 100,000 per account that can be refined per day, which, as I wasn't really that focused on getting, I didn't really hit it during my time playing. However, it is totally possible to do so. Do you want to know what one of the best sources of rough astral diamond is? It's treasure chests. And of course, if you're familiar with D&D, you probably know what I'm going to say. There are of course mimics, and I love mimics, no matter the universe or in what form or shape they come in, they're fucking great. Luggage is one of my favourite characters in Discworld, but I kind of feel like they've lost their charm in a way, especially given that you've also got games such as Dark Souls and pretty much anything else with a chest in it which tries to pull the mimic card. And a slightly annoying part about it is that they are really easy to spot. They have completely different indicators to normal treasure chests, and I just kind of wish they didn't. I wish they were more subtle, maybe if they had a different pattern on them. But I feel like that about all of the traps in the game. Were there a few that still got me? Well, of course there was, but I really don't see the need for it at all. Most of them are so obvious that if you take a moment to check, you'll see that you're gonna get wrecked if you stand on that completely different coloured rock compared to all the rest. But this also brings me on to dungeon design itself. Some of the locations in this game are so visually stunning. The Clockwork Tomb was the first place that really blew me away. An instanced location which houses some Cult of the Dragon artifacts that the Undead Lady is trying to nick. I don't know what I had expected from this game, but I didn't think it was places as well designed as they are. Cryptic's team absolutely nails the high fantasy ambience of D&D. It reminds me a lot of how ESO's environmental designs are quite unique and interesting. It's clear that a lot of time and love went into the art of the game, and I'm glad. Of course, I can't speak for the later modules, but the starting caves and general areas are filled with the aesthetic you'd expect from a D&D based game. I hate to admit it as well, but you know, there was a few legit jump scares that I actually had playing this game. It's probably one of the first MMOs that has really given me a small jump. lot of creative thought has gone into the way that all these places are designed, from the positioning of props and the dynamic lighting and the general ambience of the locations is just spectacular. I really can't praise it enough. Does it look the best graphically? No, not really, but I don't think it matters that much when it's slightly stylized. I did actually try to look a bit into who the art team were, but given the length of the project, it was kind of hard to track people down to specific projects. However, I did actually manage to find 2 of the environmental team's websites with some incredible work on there, and not just from Neverwinter. Quite interestingly, at the end of the Clockwork Tomb, the reward for finishing the quest is a 100% off voucher for extra bank space. Now, this was genuinely quite a surprise when I got to it. And it's very clear that this is Cryptic's way of giving the player a nudge as a little reminder and introduction to the fact that they can actually spend money. But let's do it. Let's talk about monetization. So, you've got your 2 main currencies. You've got your Astral Diamonds and Zen. Astral Diamonds, of course, can be earned in-game. It's a slow grind as you'd expect, but you can earn them. These can also be traded for Zen Astral Diamonds, which are the cash shop ones. You can buy booster packs, which can either give you gear for your specific class or account-wide. The account-wide ones only give you weapons, though. Some packs will also include things like mounts, titles, and bag spaces, and professional materials. The prices will start on the store from about 100 Zen for more service-based items, including the enchanted key, which are used to open lockboxes. And I don't know if they're just disabled for the first few levels. I didn't get my first for several hours into playing the game, and I can respect that a free-to-play needs to make its money somehow, but I really hate this system. I hated it in Counter-Strike, and I hate this. And I know a lot of people give a lot of shit to lockboxes, but I'd rather have it how Overwatch 1 did it, and you get one for leveling rather than getting them and then having to buy a key, which after I started getting lockboxes, I got loads. Most sessions, I easily got several in a short space of time, and you know what? Fair enough. When you sat there with nearly 40 of them in your bag and you can vendor them for almost nothing at all. And here's the even bigger problem with this, is if I even wanted to open one box, I'd have to buy 1,000 Zen. Exactly like how Microsoft points used to work. You'd have to buy 1,200 Zen, meaning you can open 12 per purchase. But we go back again to Cryptic using their weak hand this time. And it's all good, because Cryptic had announced that these actually have a streak mechanic that guarantees certain rewards after the player has opened a set number of boxes, and supposedly players are guaranteed to receive the major prize after 250 openings, which, looking at the loot table, I can see that there is a mount and some blades. And you know what? If I didn't get the mount and just got the gear, I'd be so pissed off. This gear absolutely has to be relevant throughout the rest of the game, or at least look that good. But the more interesting question is, how much would it cost you to get the 250? Well, you'd need roughly 31,330 Zen, which, if you wanted, you'd have to buy 24,000, which comes with a bonus of 3,600, and 6,000, which obviously takes you over the total needed. But this will set you back $257. Not the most expensive virtual mount in the world, but man, that is so rough. And if there is that possibility of getting one or another, I don't know what the hell I would ever do if I got the bones instead. If I've got $300 to throw away on an incredibly average MMO, then I guess I could probably just buy another one in hopes that I get the other thing next time. And no doubt, like most of the free-to-play market, I'd imagine that a large part of the profits come from the whales that are buying these things. And it's not like they're doing too bad either. This article here from MMOs.com states that Embracer's acquisition of Cryptic Studios places 20 million players on the game, and over 400 million in revenue had been generated. And of course, as is the staple to any of these sort of games, there's a battle pass, and also you can buy a skip, because why wouldn't there be a skip? When you dig deep, the monetization really sucks. It isn't a complete game breaker if you don't use it. Like, I imagine it can be if you're doing PvP, because you're more likely to end up coming against somebody who has paid to enchant all their gear. That sucks. But for like PvE and general like solo stuff, I really don't think it's gonna matter. But of course there is also a monthly sub that you can buy, which obviously you have to use Zen to buy it. As I said, this is very much how Microsoft points used to work, and it was an absolute pain trying to get Xbox Gold. As always, the standard benefits are rewarded to you for being a member. However, there is a little bit of a twist on this, and it's VIP loyalty. Now, I have seen VIP loyalty in a couple of other games as well. I'm pretty sure Rift had it. You see it being used a lot more in mobile games, but it clearly works. And what happens with this system is that your VIP level actually changes depending on how much you spend per 100 Zen. or per month of subscribing. Some of the bonuses honestly seem a little bit crap, but as you can ascend, you'll get more and more benefits. The last 5 ranks, though, are probably some of the worst. And they really are doing quite a disservice to people who are actually spending to hit that rank 12 VIP, because just giving a discount voucher on a vendor is really crap. Like, why not add some transmog gear, special companions, pets, mounts, literally anything? It just seems like when they were writing and planning all these bonuses out, they realised it was nearly lunch and that it was pizza party day, so they had to make sure they finished on time. So after doing a few more zones, I was introduced to professions.
Is this a joke? You can't do this to me.
The workshop's been losing money hand over fist since you took over. I'm sorry.
The shop's nothing without me.
It's nothing because of you. A master you may be, but you've no mind for leadership.
You can't lead the talentless to greatness. To hell's with you.
You get a full quest line to go through, turning up at a failing workshop with the previous crafter being turfed out for not bringing enough money in. After a general introduction, you're introduced to a load of retainers. You can pick who you want, it doesn't really matter. I went with this woman for no real reason, just wasn't that interested in their personalities to actually care about who I picked. You're then asked which profession you'd actually like to focus on. You can do all of the professions, there's no unlearning and swapping, which is pretty nice, and I decided to go with dual crafting first. You're then introduced to your playing manager simulator, so you can hire new crafters and upgrade your workshop. The people you hire are artisans, so you don't actually do the crafting yourself, you hire these people in to get them to do the tasks, and you'll get a new one asking to join your workshop each day at various times of the day. These also come with skills, proficiency, focus, speed, and commission cost, which of course increase as they gain levels. Again, this is essentially mirroring Final Fantasies, even to the point of giving them gear to provide stat buffs. But as I said, instead of your character doing the work, your character just rakes the gold in. There is also a morale system. Every day you can use your daily morale to finish tasks immediately. Tasks will typically take a set amount of time, but you can whip them into shape with this daily. It's an alright system, but it's just another time gate. You can also assign people to go out to collect specific items, and they'll come back and place the materials in a box, and you'll have to go back to clear it out. I imagine that the time increases later on when you go, but these first ones were only around 10 minutes, and if I'm quite honest with you, I felt like I was a lot more interested in the adventuring side of this game. I'm very hit and miss with professions, some I can just fall into and focus on more than anything, like in ESO and Final Fantasy. This wasn't for me, or at least it isn't for now. Maybe if I do actually continue playing the game, I'll look to invest more time into the profession system, and it is a lot like other crafting systems that I enjoy in other games. And I can also appreciate how this must have been a bit more of a different experience to have with crafting back in 2013. I should probably say as well that if you have VIP rank 1, you can just teleport to the workshop from the world map, but I'm not about to go spending money on this game just for that. As I've already said, I do quite like the way that the quests are in Neverwinter, and I've been quite enjoying them. But something I didn't actually touch upon earlier is the fact that you level up through quests in Neverwinter. And you know what? I really like it that way. You don't get XP just from killing or anything like that. You don't have a bar. It just has leveling up for a quest reward, which I guess you could foresee that actually it'd make more things obsolete quicker, but being able to get loot that can be refined, it just kind of makes it worth killing stuff. But one of the things that I think is a bit weird about it, since the game had its level squished to level 20, there has been some pretty interesting choices of when to unlock certain things in the game. For example, you'd kind of expect level 10 to be a good level to hit, but in terms of what you unlock, it's sparse at best. Actually, level 11 is much better, as this is when you unlock your Paragon path. But my question is, why isn't this level 10? I guess when they were squishing the cap from 70 down to 20, they encountered some sort of problem with the pacing of hitting level 11 when you do, but actually I kind of doubt that much thought even went into it, if I'm being brutally honest. And before the squish, it was level 30 that you got it, so it's just such a strange number. But if you've hit this point, you've officially gone past halfway. So let's talk about the Paragon path. Well, it's kind of like your spec. You start off as a wizard, rogue, or whatever, and you can choose from 2 paths. I specifically went for the Thaumaturge as it's meant to be the better pick for extra AoE on a wizard, which is pretty scarce as it is. They're a much better single target DPS class. They only have like my daily, my mount, and my companion's AoE to rely on, and most of those are pretty weak. But I've just realized also I've just got to this point without actually really touching upon the companion system in the game. At level 5 you're given an introductory quest which allows you to speak with an NPC in the Adventurers Guild who will sell you your first companion. I went for the Wizard companion simply for the extra AoE. You of course also don't have to wait till you get to level 5 if you want to buy one immediately. You can buy one from the store, but of course I didn't. Companions need to be geared and summoned. They only need 3 bits of equipment and all of the companion gear stats will be added directly also to your own stats. Quite a lot like how the mount equipment also works. There's a lot of different systems in this game which needs its own independent gear swapping. And whilst it does sound like quite a lot, it really isn't too bad and you'll get used to it pretty quick. The companions are actually pretty handy in combat. I didn't really feel like there was an extreme difference from soloing and actually could be an absolute pain whenever I was trying to get shots for this video. But overall they're a good addition to have with you. They avoid traps quite well and actually have alright AI. It isn't the best, but it works. You attack, they die, you help them up. In a way it's a bit of a shame that you can actually just get them up so easily and that they can't be put out of action after going down after like X amount of times. But I imagine if I keep talking I'm probably going to be giving Cryptic whole new ideas about further way to monetize the game, so I'm going to shut the fuck up. But my time with Neverwinter has actually been quite an interesting one. I've gone from not really enjoying it at the very beginning to finding myself actually wanting to play it even now. And this might be one of those rare occasions in which I actually genuinely do keep it installed. I can never see myself actually ever properly devoting my time to it, but it's certainly an MMO that I could pick up and play to go through a few zones, to do their story and just leave it again. It's funny that this is now the second game I've looked at which I feel like it'd benefit and probably would have done even better so as a single player game. I don't feel as strongly about that position as I did with Secret World, but I think it's got a decent enough story that it could easily be just one of those mid-tier ARPGs, somewhat like Dark Alliance is, although I have heard quite a lot of bad stuff about the new Dark Alliance. The PS2 version is incredible though. But you know what, yeah, I probably will return to Neverwinter. I really do want to explore the other classes and see where the adventure takes me. It's an enjoyable game with an enjoyable story, and if you're looking for an in-depth, slow experience, you'll want the other D&D MMO. But as free-to-play MMOs go, Cryptic certainly haven't done a bad job, and I think Neverwinter Online will still be going quite strong in the future. It seems to have a pretty consistent base of players, with the average on Steam being about 1,000 at night. Of course, as always with these Steam charts, you can't just trust it, because there are also other platforms, and for this instance especially, it's not just PC that you've got to consider, because there's also the Xbox version and the PlayStation version. Now I'm not sure if as well there's like PlayStation 4 and Xbox One servers alongside the newer generations, but if there is, then that's just another extra layer. I think it would be very, very interesting to see if there was any possibility of ever having an actual like mega server that crossed all platforms, but the chances of that ever happening are so slim. I'd imagine that Sony and Microsoft will both be biting at the bit to ensure that that doesn't happen for one reason or another. Although granted, it does seem like Microsoft are trying to become a lot more cross-platform friendly. And honestly, good on them. I think the things like the console wars are just dumb. I genuinely feel like it could be quite beneficial for Cryptic to amalgamate all of the different platforms onto one server. In the end, it just means that the game will last longer, and if it becomes more popular, maybe it'll actually start to put even more effort into making great content for the game. But I guess only time will tell with that.